The text didn't arrive with a bang or a flurry of exclamation points. It was casual, almost administrative, lighting up my phone while I was midway through a spreadsheet. Stay home. Nobody wants you there. My mother didn't specify where, but we both knew Lauren, my twin sister, was turning 25 that weekend. I felt the nausea hit my throat before the hurt did, the familiar, suffocating realization that in my family, I was merely the rough draft for their masterpiece. The notification did not arrive with a scream. It arrived with a silent, polite vibration against the mahogany surface of my desk, right between my lukewarm coffee and a stack of quarterly reports. I turned the phone over, expecting a spam email or a reminder from my dentist. Instead, I saw the group chat name, the Bailey Hive, and a single message from my mother. Stay home. Nobody wants you there. It was a complete sentence, grammatically perfect, brutally efficient. She was referring to the weekend. My twin sister, Lauren, was turning 25. We were turning 25. But in the Bailey household, birthdays were not shared commodities. They were allocated resources. And for the last quarter of a century, the market share had belonged exclusively to Lauren. I stared at the screen. The wording was what cut the deepest. It was not an angry command shouted in the heat of an argument. It was casual. It was administrative. It was the kind of text you send to a contractor you no longer need, or a distant cousin who asks for too many favors. Stay home. As if my presence at my own birthday celebration was an imposition on the general public. I tried to rationalize it. I sat there in my ergonomic office chair, surrounded by the quiet hum of a corporate high-rise in downtown Chicago. And I tried to build a logic puzzle that solved this without hurting me. I told myself that I was busy. I had a demanding job as a logistics coordinator. I had deadlines. I did not want the drama of driving 2 hours to the sprawling rental estate they had booked on the lake. I told myself I preferred the silence of my own apartment, but my body rejected the lie before my brain could finish constructing it. A wave of nausea rolled through my stomach, hot and acidic. My hands, usually steady enough to manage six-figure supply chains, began to tremble. It was a physical regression. I was $3,200 a month in rent, a 401k, and a 10-year plan away from my childhood. Yet one text message had turned me back into the 12-year-old girl standing in the hallway. Listening to her parents explain why Lauren needed the new dress, and I could make do with the hand-me-down because Allison is the resilient one. I was the difficult twin, the extra one, the spare part kept in the trunk in case the engine failed, but never meant to be seen on the showroom floor. I needed to hear a voice. I needed someone to tell me this was a misunderstanding, a typo, a joke. I called my father. He answered on the second ring, his voice booming with a cheerfulness that sounded manufactured. "Allison, just thinking about you." "Kiddo," he said. "Mom just texted me," I said, keeping my voice level. "She said nobody wants me there." There was a pause on the line, a beat of silence where I could hear the background noise of his life, clinking silverware, the rustle of fabric, the low hum of people moving with purpose. "Oh, that," he said, his tone shifting into a lower gear. "Look, Allie, don't read too much into it. It is just logistics. The venue is tight on numbers, and we are trying to keep the flow manageable. You know how your mother gets about capacity." "Dad," I said, "it is a rented estate on Lake Michigan. It sleeps 30 people. I am the twin sister. Are you telling me there is no room for me at our birthday?" He cleared his throat. "It is not just a party, Allie. It is complicated. We have a photographer coming, a very specific one, and there are some important people dropping by, networking types. We just need everything to be streamlined. We need the focus to be clear." "The focus," I repeated. "You mean the brand?" "Do not start," he said, the cheerfulness evaporating entirely. "Do not make this about you. This weekend is a big opportunity for Lauren. Her image is fragile right now. We just need a clean run. You understand, right? You always understand." He hung up before I could answer. I sat with the phone pressed to my ear for a long time after the line went dead. a clean run, as if I were a stain on the carpet that couldn't be scrubbed out in time for the guests to arrive. I met Sarah for drinks that evening. Sarah was the only person in my life who knew the full extent of the Bailey family dynamic, mostly because she had witnessed it firsthand during our college years. When I showed her the text, she didn't look sad. She looked furious. "This is insane, Allison," she said, slamming her glass down on the coaster. "You are a grown woman. You are financially independent. You have a career. Why do you let them ground you? You are not 12. "I know," I said, staring at the condensation on my glass. "But it is not about permission. It is about the fact that they are so comfortable doing it. They do not even fear that I will fight back. They know I will just disappear because that is what I have always done." "So stop disappearing," Sarah said. "If I go, it will be a scene," I said. "Dad said there are important people there, photographers." "Good," Sarah said. "Let them take a picture of the truth for once. Allison, look at me. They are throwing a 25th birthday party for a twin and telling the other twin to stay home. That is not normal. That is pathological. If you don't show up, you are agreeing with them. You are signing the contract that says you don't exist." She was right. I had been trained to accept exclusion as a form of love. I had been taught that my greatest contribution to the family was my absence. If I stayed home, I was good. If I showed up, I was difficult. But the nausea in my stomach had shifted into something else, something colder, harder. "I am going," I said. "Good," Sarah said. "I am not going to fight," I added, mostly to reassure myself. "I just want to see it. I want to see what they are doing that is so important I had to be banned from the premises. I want to witness it." I went home and packed a bag. I bought a gift, a simple, elegant silver picture frame from a boutique near my apartment. It was a peace offering, a prop. I rehearsed my lines in the mirror. "Surprise, I just wanted to drop this off. I won't stay long. Happy birthday. Lauren." I promised myself I would leave at the first sign of humiliation. I promised myself I would be dignity personified. I broke that promise the moment I walked through the door. The drive to the lake house took 2 hours. The estate was a monstrosity of modern glass and cedar, perched on a bluff overlooking the water. The driveway was lined with cars that cost more than my entire education. Valets were running back and forth, dressed in crisp black uniforms. I parked my modest sedan down the road and walked up the long gravel drive, my heels crunching in the silence. I could hear the music before I saw the party. It was a tasteful ambient jazz playlist, the kind that whispers money. I walked through the open front doors, bracing myself for a confrontation. But there was no security guard, no bouncer, just a catering staff moving trays of hors d'oeuvres and a crowd of beautiful polished people holding champagne flutes. The house had been transformed. It didn't look like a birthday party. It looked like a set for a lifestyle magazine shoot. The lighting was golden and diffuse. There were floral arrangements that likely cost thousands of dollars. And everywhere, there were photos of Lauren. That was the first thing that stopped me cold. In the grand foyer, they had set up a memory wall. It was a massive gallery-style installation of black and white photographs chronicling Lauren's life. Lauren as a baby, Lauren as a toddler, Lauren winning the 5th grade spelling bee, Lauren at prom. I walked closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. I knew these photos. I was in these photos. The picture of the 5th grade spelling bee. I had been standing right next to her, holding my second-place ribbon. In the version on the wall, I was gone. The image had been cropped so tightly that my shoulder was just a blur of negative space. The picture of our 16th birthday. We were blowing out the candles on a shared cake, on the wall. The photo was angled and digitally altered, so that only Lauren and her half of the cake were visible. It wasn't just favoritism, it was erasure. I felt a phantom limb sensation. Looking at those pictures, I remembered the heat of the flash in those moments. I remembered the smell of the cake. I remembered being there, but looking at this wall. History had been rewritten. There was only Lauren. She was the sun. and the universe had no other planets. "Excuse me?" I turned. A young woman with a sleek bob and a glass of rosé was looking at me with polite confusion. "I don't mean to stare," she said, tilting her head, "but you look exactly like the birthday girl. Are you a cousin?" The air left my lungs. "I am her sister," I said. "Her twin?" The woman's eyebrows shot up. "Her twin? No way. Lauren never mentioned she had a twin. That is wild. I have known her for 3 years." "She likes to keep me a secret," I said, trying to keep my tone light, but it came out brittle. "Well, the resemblance is uncanny," the woman said, laughing nervously. "I honestly thought you were her for a second. But you know, different vibe." "Mom." "Different vibe," I repeated. "Yeah, Lauren is so, sparkly." Before I could ask what that meant, a hand gripped my upper arm. The fingers were digging in hard enough to bruise. "Allison." It wasn't a greeting. It was a warning shot. I turned to see my mother. She was dressed in a cream-colored silk gown that draped perfectly over her frame. Her hair was immaculate. Her makeup was flawless. But her eyes were 2 chips of flint. She didn't let go of my arm. She smiled. A wide, dazzling smile for the benefit of the room, while she physically steered me away from the memory wall and toward a darker corner of the hallway. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice a low ventriloquist act, her lips barely moving. "I told you to stay home." "Hello, Mother," I said, pulling my arm free. "I wanted to wish my sister a happy birthday, since it is my birthday too." "Lower your voice," she snapped. She glanced around nervously, her eyes darting to a man with a massive camera lens standing near the buffet. "You cannot be seen here. Not now. Not tonight." "Why?" I asked. "Am I that embarrassing? Look at me. I am dressed appropriately. I am sober. I am your daughter." "You are not part of this," she said. It was a statement of fact, cold and absolute. "This is Lauren's night. We have spent months curating this. We have important people here. Allison, people who are looking at the family, looking at the stability." "The stability?" I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "You cropped me out of the baby photos. Mom, that is not stability. That is psychosis." "It is branding," she whispered furiously. "Lauren has a chance at something huge, a partnership, but they need a specific narrative. They need the only child energy, the singular focus. You complicate the story. You always complicate the story." "I am a person," I said, "not a plot hole." "Please," she said, and for a second, the anger cracked and revealed pure desperation. "Just go into the kitchen. Stay out of the main hall until the speeches are done. Then you can leave. Please, Allison, do not ruin this for her." She didn't wait for an answer. She saw someone waving at her from across the room and immediately composed her face into a mask of radiant hospitality. Turning away from me as if I were a waiter who had dropped a tray, I stood there, vibrating with adrenaline. I should have left. I should have walked out the door and never looked back. But the journalist in me, the part of me that observed details for a living, had caught something. My mother hadn't just been looking at the photographer. She had been looking at a specific woman standing near the fireplace. I looked over. The woman was striking. She was older, perhaps in her 50s, with silver hair cut in a sharp, architectural style. She wore a black suit that looked more like armor than evening wear. She wasn't drinking. She wasn't eating. She was standing with perfect posture, watching Lauren, who was currently laughing at a joke told by a group of men in suits. But the woman wasn't watching Lauren with affection. She was watching her with assessment, like a horse trader checking teeth. Behind the woman, a banner was draped discreetly over a side table. The Sterling Foundation. Investing in Tomorrow's Leaders. I knew that name. I didn't know why, but it rang a bell. I stepped back into the shadows of the hallway, making myself small. It was a skill I had perfected over 3 decades. If you stand still enough, people forget you are there. They treat you like furniture. My father walked past me, heading toward my mother. He didn't see me. He was wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. "Is she watching?" my father asked, his voice tight. "She hasn't taken her eyes off her," my mother replied, stepping up to him. "Where is Allison?" "I don't know," my father said. "I thought you handled it." "I told her to hide," my mother said. "God, if she talks to that woman, if she says the wrong thing—" "She won't," my father said. "She doesn't know anything." "It doesn't matter what she knows," my mother hissed. "It matters what she is. If the Sterling rep sees two of them, if she starts asking questions about the timeline, we are done. David, we are absolutely done. The contract is specific." "I know," my father said. "I'll find Allison. I'll get her out." They moved away, plunging back into the crowd, pasting their smiles back on. I stood frozen in the hallway. The contract is specific. This wasn't a birthday party. It was a closing ceremony. They were selling something, and Lauren was the product. And I wasn't just an embarrassment. I was a liability, a breach of contract. My curiosity overrode my hurt. I needed to know what they were so afraid of. I slipped deeper into the house. The party was concentrated in the great room and the patio. Leaving the back corridors empty, I knew the layout of these types of rental McMansions. There was always a staging area for the event planners. I found it in the library. The door was cracked open. Inside, stacks of extra chairs were pushed against the mahogany bookshelves. Coats were piled on the leather sofa, and on the large oak desk in the center of the room, there was a chaotic spread of papers. I stepped inside and closed the door softly behind me. My heart was thumping in my throat, a frantic drumbeat. I felt like an intruder in my own family's life. I walked to the desk. There was a printed seating chart, color-coded with sticky notes. VIP, press, donors. Lauren's name was at the head table. My name was nowhere. Next to the chart was a thick folder labeled Lauren, Sterling, Final. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the manila cover. This was the line. If I opened this, I wasn't just the difficult daughter anymore. I was the enemy. I thought about the cropped photos. I thought about the stay-home text. I thought about the way my mother looked at me, not with love, but with risk assessment. I opened the folder. It wasn't a party plan. It was a legal document. The top page was a memorandum of understanding between the Sterling Foundation and Lauren Bailey. I scanned the legalese, my eyes catching phrases that made no sense in the context of a scholarship or a job offer, subject to strict image standards, full disclosure of medical and familial history, morality clause regarding past incidents, termination of funding upon discovery of undisclosed liabilities. And then, clipped to the back of the contract, a timeline, a biography of Lauren Bailey. I ran my finger down the dates. Year 1 to 5, early childhood, advanced placement. Year 10 to 14, competitive gymnastics, state finalist. My finger stopped. There was a gap between the ages of 16 and 17. The timeline simply skipped. It went from sophomore year, honor roll, to senior year, valedictorian. An entire year was missing. I stared at the paper. 16. That was the year of the accident. The year my parents had told me never to speak about. The year everything in our house had gone quiet and cold. And I had been sent to stay with Aunt Carol for 3 months because Mom needs space to deal with Lauren. I had always assumed Lauren had been sick or in trouble, but we never talked about it. It was the black hole in our family history. Now, looking at this document, I realized it wasn't just a silence. It was a redaction. My parents weren't just protecting Lauren's future. They were burying her past. And for some reason, my existence, my physical presence in this house, threatened to dig it up. "What are you doing?" The voice came from the doorway. I spun around, the folder slipping from my fingers and sliding across the desk. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't my father. It was Lauren. She was standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the light from the hall. She looked breathtaking. Her dress was a shimmering column of silver sequins, her hair a cascade of perfect waves. She looked like the photos on the wall. She looked like the winner, but up close, I saw the cracks. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were wide and dilated, fueled by panic and champagne. "Allison," she said, her voice trembling, "you weren't supposed to see that." "Happy birthday," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "I see you started the celebration without me." "You have to leave," Lauren said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. She didn't look angry. She looked terrified. "If Mom finds you in here with that folder—" "What is it, Lauren?" I asked, pointing to the desk. "What is the Sterling Foundation? Why are they buying you?" "They aren't buying me," she snapped, a flash of defensive heat rising in her cheeks. "They are investing in me. It is a fellowship, a brand ambassadorship. It changes everything. Allison, it is the launch pad." "And what is the price?" I asked. "Deleting me? Erasure?" "It is not about you," she said, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. "Why do you always make it about you? You have your life. You have your job. You are fine. Why can't you just let me have this?" "Because I am your sister," I said, my voice rising. "Because I drove 2 hours to wish you a happy birthday, and I walk in to find out I have been cropped out of my own childhood." "Shh," Lauren hissed, pressing her hands together. "Please, they are listening." "Who?" "Them," she whispered. "The foundation, Mom and Dad, everyone. I am walking a tightrope. Allison, one slip and it is over. Please. If you love me, just go." I looked at her, really looked at her. Under the layers of makeup and the expensive dress, I saw the sister I used to share a bedroom with. I saw the fear. She wasn't the golden child. She was the hostage. But before I could answer, the door handle turned. Lauren jumped back as if she had been burned. I grabbed the phone from my pocket. I didn't think. I just reacted. I held it up and snapped a photo of the document on the desk. Just the top page. The one with the Sterling Foundation header and the termination clause. The flash was blinding in the dim room. The door swung open. My father stood there, behind him. I could see the sleek, silver-haired woman from the foundation, looking past his shoulder with sharp, predatory interest. "Is everything all right in here?" the woman asked, her voice smooth as glass. My father's face went pale. He looked from me to the folder on the desk, then back to the woman. "Fine," my father choked out. "Just family matters." "I see," the woman said. Her eyes locked onto mine. She didn't smile. "I didn't realize there were 2 of you." The room went silent. The air pressure dropped. I looked at my father. I looked at Lauren. And I realized, with a sudden, crystal clarity, that I was holding a grenade. And the pin had just been pulled. "There aren't," my mother's voice cut in from the hallway, sharp and desperate. She pushed past the woman, entering the room like a storm front. "Allison is just leaving." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into the soft flesh. "Go," she whispered in my ear. "Now." But I didn't move. I looked at the woman from the foundation. "Nice to meet you," I said. "I'm the other one." And then I walked out, not because my mother told me to, but because I had what I came for. I had the truth, and I had a picture of the contract. I didn't know what it meant yet. I didn't know about the morality clause or the missing year or the specific nature of the lie they were telling, but I knew one thing as I walked out of that house and into the cool night air. The gravel crunching under my feet, the Bailey family brand was about to crash. I got into my car, my hands shaking so hard I could barely put the key in the ignition. I drove away, watching the lights of the party fade in my rearview mirror. I thought I was escaping. I was wrong. I was just moving the battlefield. As I merged onto the highway, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't Lauren. It was a notification from my work email, synced to my phone. Subject: HR meeting request. Urgent. Time: tomorrow, 8 a.m. Regarding personnel complaint. I stared at the glowing screen. The timing was impossible, unless, of course, The people who wanted me to stay home had a longer reach than I thought. I gripped the steering wheel and drove into the dark. The nausea was gone. The shame was gone. All that was left was a cold, quiet rage. They didn't want me there? Fine, but they were going to wish they had let me in. My hands were trembling so violently that the first photo I took was a blur of white paper and mahogany desk. I had to steady my elbows against my ribs, force a breath into my lungs, and tap the screen again. The camera lens focused, capturing the sharp black text of the document labeled Final. I didn't have time to read the whole thing. I just saw the words jumping out at me like warning flares. Image standards, disclosure of liability, termination triggers, familial conduct clauses. It looked less like a scholarship agreement and more like a grim reaper. It suggested that Lauren's opportunities, whatever this fellowship or brand ambassadorship was, were tied to conditions so strict that a single misstep could detonate the entire arrangement. And apparently, I was the misstep. I shoved my phone back into my clutch, just as the adrenaline began to curdle into panic. I needed to get out of the library, if my father came back, or if that woman from the foundation decided to investigate the other one, I would be cornered. I slipped out the side door, navigating the back hallway of the rental estate. The air conditioning was humming aggressively, chilling the sweat on the back of my neck. I needed to find Lauren, not the glossy, curated version of her that was currently holding court in the main hall, but my sister, the person I had shared a womb with. I needed to know if she understood what she was signing, or if she was just doing what she had been trained to do since we were 5 years old: smile, nod, and let Mom and Dad handle the messy parts. I found her in the powder room off the kitchen. She was reapplying her lipstick, leaning close to the mirror, staring at her own reflection with a kind of detached intensity. When I pushed the door open, she jumped, the lipstick smearing slightly at the corner of her mouth. "Jesus, Allison," she breathed, grabbing a tissue. "You scared me." I locked the door behind me. The room was small, wallpapered in dizzying floral patterns, smelling of expensive soap and anxiety. "We need to talk," I said. "I saw the folder. Lauren, I saw the contract on the desk." Lauren turned to face me. She had fixed the smudge. Her face composed itself into a bright, practiced smile, the one she used for cameras, for teachers, for distant relatives. It was a terrifying transformation to watch from 2 feet away. It didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes remained flat and guarded. "You are making everything weird, Allie," she said, her voice light and airy. "It is just standard paperwork. Dad said it is just to protect the assets. You know how legal stuff is. It is boring." "Protect the assets?" I repeated. "You are the asset, Lauren. Do you realize that? The contract talks about termination if there are undisclosed liabilities. It talks about image standards." "So?" she shrugged, turning back to the mirror to fluff her hair. "I have high standards. That is a good thing." "They cropped me out of the photos," I said. The words came out quieter than I intended, heavy with the hurt I was trying to suppress. I went to the memory wall. The pictures of us together? I am gone. They cut me out like I am a tumor. Lauren's hand froze midair. For a second, the mask slipped. Her shoulders slumped, and she looked at me in the mirror, her expression crumpling into something resembling shame. "I know," she whispered. "I told Mom it looked obvious. I told her people would notice. But you let them do it," I said. "It is complicated," she said, her voice cracking. She cleared her throat and immediately straightened her spine, as if an invisible wire had pulled her upright. She turned back to me, the smile plastered back on. "Mom says it is about focus. A singular narrative is more compelling for the donors. It is not personal, Allison. It is just storytelling." I stared at her. "You are quoting her. That is not you speaking. That is Mom." "It is the truth," Lauren insisted. But she glanced at the door, checking to see if anyone was listening. Then she checked her watch. Then she smoothed her dress. "Look, I have to go back out there. The speeches are starting in 20 minutes. Please, Allison, Just be cool. Don't make a scene. I am not the one making a scene, I said. I am the one being erased from it. Just stay out of the way, she said, reaching for the door handle. For me? Please, she slipped out before I could answer. Leaving me alone with the floral wallpaper, I realized then that my sister wasn't just the favorite. She was a product. She wasn't being protected. She was being managed. Every word out of her mouth had been scripted, rehearsed, and polished until there was nothing left of the original girl but the fear in her eyes. I washed my hands, though they weren't dirty, just to give myself a moment to breathe. When I walked back out into the party, the atmosphere had shifted. The lights had dimmed slightly, and the volume of the music had lowered. The guests were clustering in groups, holding fresh glasses of champagne. I tried to blend in near a pillar, but in a room full of people who had been told I didn't exist, I felt radioactive. Allison? The voice was cloying, dripping with a sugary concern that made my teeth ache. I turned to see Mrs. Gable, a longtime friend of my parents. She was a woman who treated gossip like a contact sport. She was wearing a sequined tunic that cost more than my car, and she was looking at me with her head tilted to the side, her eyes wide with faux sympathy. Mrs. Gable, I said, nodding. Good to see you. Oh, honey, she said, stepping into my personal space and lowering her voice to a theatrical whisper. I was so surprised to see you here. Your mother said you were taking some time. Taking some time? I asked. You know, she said, waving a manicured hand vaguely near her head. Away, focusing on your health. We were all so worried when we heard about the episodes starting up again. I felt the blood drain from my face. Episodes? It is brave of you to come out, she continued, patting my arm. Really, most people would just hide away until the medication was balanced. But you always were the stubborn one, weren't you? She smiled, a tight, pitying expression that was designed to humiliate. I understood it instantly. It was a modern kind of attack. My parents hadn't just told people I was busy or difficult. They had planted a narrative that I was mentally unstable. It was the perfect cover. If I got angry about being excluded, it was an episode. If I spoke up about the lies, it was my imbalance. If I cried, I was off my meds. I am perfectly healthy, Mrs. Gable, I said, my voice cold. I work 50 hours a week in logistics. I own my own apartment. I am not having episodes. Of course, dear, she said, patting my arm again, clearly not believing a word of it. It is good to see you trying. Just don't overdo it, okay? Lauren has so much riding on tonight. She drifted away, leaving the poison in the air between us. My parents had been telling stories about me for years. They had been paving the road for this moment, ensuring that if I ever tried to tell the truth, I would already be discredited. I needed a drink. I didn't even want the alcohol. I just needed something to hold. I made my way toward the bar, weaving through the crowd. I was reaching for a glass of water when a figure appeared at my elbow. There you are. It was the woman, the one from the foundation. The one with the architectural haircut and the eyes like scanners. She was looking at me, but she wasn't seeing Allison. She was seeing Lauren. I have been looking for you, she said, her tone brisk and professional. We need to clarify the signature on the disclosure form regarding the medical history. The legal team is flagging a discrepancy. My heart hammered. She thought I was my sister. We were identical, after all, and in the dim light. With my hair down, the resemblance was strong enough to fool a stranger. I started to correct her, but she pressed on. It is a minor detail, but crucial, she said, leaning in. Are you the one who signed away the rights, or was that only Lauren? The question hung in the air, suspended in the silence between tracks on the playlist. Are you the one who signed away the rights? Excuse me? I said. The woman paused. She looked at me closer. Her eyes narrowed, taking in the slightly different shade of my dress, the lack of the diamond necklace Lauren was wearing, the tension in my jaw. You aren't Lauren, she said, It wasn't a question. No, I said. I am Allison, her twin. The woman's expression sharpened. It wasn't cruel, but it was instantly alert, high alert. She took a half step back, her demeanor shifting from colleague to investigator. I see, she said. I was under the impression— Never mind. What did you mean? I asked, stepping toward her. What rights? Who signed what? I mistook you for someone else, she said smoothly. My apologies. You asked if I signed away rights, I pressed. Does my name appear on your documents? The woman didn't answer. She gave me a polite, tight-lipped nod and turned on her heel. I watched as she walked briskly toward the French doors leading to the patio. As soon as she was clear of the crowd, she pulled her phone from her pocket and dialed a number. She didn't look happy. I had stepped on a landmine, a buried, rusted, explosive secret. Allison, my mother, materialized out of the crowd. She wasn't smiling anymore. She grabbed my elbow with a grip that felt like a blood pressure cuff inflated to the maximum. You need to leave, she said. Her voice was shaking with rage. Right now. Why? I asked, yanking my arm away. Because I talked to your investor? You are disrupting the event. My father appeared on my other side, creating a wall of parental disappointment. We asked you to do one thing, stay home, and you come here and start harassing the guests. I didn't harass anyone, I said. She approached me. She thought I was Lauren. She asked me about signing away rights. Dad, what did she mean? She is confused, my father said, his face flushing red. And you are making a scene. Look at you. You are unstable. Don't use that word, I said. I know what you have been telling people, Mrs. Gable thinks I am on medication. We tell people what they need to hear to explain your behavior, my mother snapped. Now, are you going to walk to your car? Or do I have to have you escorted? Escorted? I looked at them, incredulous. You would call security on your own daughter? If you don't leave. Yes, my father said. He looked toward the entryway where two large men in black suits were standing. I will tell them you are crashing the party. I will tell them you are having an episode. Who do you think they will believe? The parents hosting the charity gala? Or the uninvited guest shouting in the hallway? He wanted me to shout. I realized it in that second. He wanted me to scream, to cry, to throw a drink. He wanted me to provide the evidence that would prove their lie correct. If I lost control, I validated every story they had ever told about me. I took a deep breath. I smoothed the front of my dress. No, I said calmly. I don't think I will leave just yet. Allison, my mother started. I turned my back on them. I walked away from the shadowy corner they had cornered me in and stepped directly into the center of the room. Right under the main chandelier, I saw a group of Lauren's college friends standing near the buffet. I didn't know them, but I knew they were the audience my parents were performing for. I walked up to them. My parents were frozen behind me, paralyzed. They couldn't drag me out in front of everyone without shattering the illusion of the perfect, happy family. They were held hostage by their own brand. Hi, I said to the group, extending my hand. My voice was steady, clear, and loud enough to carry over the jazz music. I don't think we have met. I am Allison. The group looked at me, confused. I am Lauren's twin sister, I continued, smiling warmly. The reaction was immediate. Ripples of confusion spread through the circle. Twin? One girl asked, blinking. Lauren has a twin? Yes, I said. I am the older one by 4 minutes. It is so nice to finally meet Lauren's friends. I hear so much about you. I saw heads turning. People nearby stopped their conversations to listen. The visual dissonance was undeniable. 2 identical women in the same room, one the star, the other a ghost who had just materialized. I moved to the next group. Hello, I am Allison, Lauren's twin, and the next. Hi, I am Allison, the sister. I watched the faces shift. It wasn't just surprise, it was suspicion. Why hadn't they known? Why was I a secret? The perfect family narrative was developing a glitch in real time. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't crazy. I was just there, polite and undeniable. My parents watched from the edge of the room, helpless. If they grabbed me now, they looked like monsters. I had checkmated them with politeness. The rest of the evening was a blur of forced smiles and whispered rumors. I could feel the eyes on me. I could feel the tension radiating from my parents, but I stayed until the speeches began. I watched Lauren stand on a small stage, thanking her supportive family, her voice trembling slightly when she didn't look in my direction. When the dancing started, I slipped away, not to leave, but to investigate. The memory wall was deserted now. The guests were distracted by the open bar and the DJ. I walked up to the display. I needed to see it again. I needed to understand the gap. I looked at the timeline of photos. The gap was starker now that I knew to look for it. Lauren at 16 was missing. There was a photo of her at 15, winning a gymnastics meet, then a photo of her at 17, accepting a diploma. The year in between was a void. I looked closely at the display board itself. It was a professional foam core mounting. But near the bottom corner, behind a photo of Lauren holding a trophy, something was causing the photo to bulge slightly. I glanced around. No one was watching. I slid my fingernail under the corner of the photo. It wasn't glued down completely. It was attached with mounting tape. I peeled it back gently, taped to the foam core. Hidden behind the glossy image of Lauren's success was a plastic bracelet. It was a hospital wristband. The plastic was yellowed with age, the edges torn as if it had been ripped off in a hurry. I squinted at the text printed on it. Patient, Bailey, L. D. O.B., June 12, 1998. Admit date, October 14th, 2014, October 14th, 2014. I stared at the date. The memory didn't come all at once. It came in fragments. Sirens, the smell of burning rubber, my mother crying in the kitchen, my father yelling into a phone, and then, the sudden instruction. Pack your bag. Allison, you are going to Aunt Carol's. We need you to be a big girl and not ask questions. I had been told it was a family emergency. I had been told Lauren was sick. When I came back 3 months later, Lauren was there, pale and quiet, and I was told never to mention that autumn again. We are moving forward, my father had said. I took a picture of the bracelet. Then I pressed the photo back down, smoothing it over the secret. I walked out of the party. This time, nobody tried to stop me. My parents were busy doing damage control with the foundation woman, who looked furious. I drove home in silence. The highway was empty. The city skyline of Chicago loomed ahead, a grid of lights against the black water of the lake. When I got to my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on my couch, the blue light of my laptop illuminating my face. I typed the date into the search bar. October 14th, 2014, car accident, Chicago suburbs. The results populated instantly. Teen driver crash leaves one in critical condition. Local athlete involved in high-speed collision. I clicked on the first article. It was from a local suburban paper. A 17-year-old girl was involved in a serious collision on Route 41 late Tuesday night. The driver, whose name has been withheld due to her age, lost control of the vehicle. Name withheld, minor, but then I saw the update at the bottom of the page. Dated 3 months later. Charges dropped in Route 41 case, due to insufficient evidence regarding driver identification. Driver identification? I sat back, my heart pounding. We were twins, identical twins. Are you the one who signed away the rights? The woman had asked. A horrible, cold realization began to seep into my bones. If the driver hadn't been identified at the scene, or if the identification had been managed. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I jumped, my nerves frayed. It was a notification from my work email, at 1 a.m. Subject, HR mandatory check-in. I opened it. Dear Allison, Human Resources requests your presence for a mandatory meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. regarding a formal complaint received concerning your conduct. Please bring your badge and company laptop. A formal complaint. About my conduct. I hadn't been at work. I had been at a birthday party 2 hours away. But the timestamp on the complaint was from this evening. My parents weren't just trying to hide me. They were trying to dismantle me. They knew I had seen the contract. They knew I had spoken to the woman. And now, they were launching a preemptive strike on the one thing that gave me independence. My job. I looked at the screen, then at the photo of the hospital bracelet on my phone. They wanted a war? They were about to get one. I wasn't the difficult twin anymore. I was the witness, and I had the one thing they couldn't buy, bribe, or intimidate into silence. I had the memories they thought they had deleted. I closed my laptop. I didn't sleep. I spent the rest of the night staring at the wall, waiting for the sun to come up, ready to fight for my life. The conference room in Human Resources was a glass box, transparent and soundproof, designed to make you feel exposed while keeping your secrets hermetically sealed. I sat across from Linda, the HR director, a woman who usually greeted me with questions about shipping manifests and supply chain bottlenecks. Today, she wouldn't meet my eyes. She was shuffling a stack of papers, her fingers nervous against the file folder. "Allison," she started, her voice tight. "We received a communication late last night, through the anonymous ethics portal." I folded my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. "A communication?" "A statement of concern," Linda corrected herself. She slid a single sheet of paper across the polished table. "It regards your conduct outside of work, but the allegations suggest a potential risk to workplace safety and stability." I looked at the paper. It was a printout from the digital submission form. The text was blocky and generic, but the words were specific, sickeningly specific. Subject exhibits signs of increasing emotional volatility. Recent harassment of family members at private events suggests a breakdown in judgment. Subject has a history of fixation and paranoia regarding siblings. We are concerned she may be a danger to herself or others if her employment environment adds stress. I felt a cold drop of sweat slide down my spine. "Fixation and paranoia," I read aloud. "Emotional volatility. We have to take these things seriously. Allison," Linda said, her tone softening into a rehearsed empathy. "Especially given the sensitive nature of your role, you manage high-value logistics. Stress is part of the job. If you are struggling—" "I am not struggling," I said, cutting her off. "Linda, look at the language here. Breakdown in judgment. Fixation. This isn't corporate speak. This is personal." "It was submitted anonymously," she said. "It was submitted by my mother," I said. "Or my father. These are phrases they use. My mother calls any disagreement a fixation. She calls any emotion she can't control volatility." Linda pulled the paper back, her face closing up. "We cannot speculate on the source. The concern is that you allegedly crashed a private event and harassed guests. Is that true?" "I attended my sister's birthday party," I said. "I am a twin. It was my birthday too." Linda paused. She clearly didn't know that. The narrative they had fed her was likely that I was a distant, estranged relative. "I see," she said. "Well, we are not taking disciplinary action at this time, but we are opening a file. We need to document this, and we would like you to take the rest of the day, a mental health day, just to reset." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. They were sending me home because someone had told them I was broken. "I will take the day," I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. "But I would like a copy of that report for my records." "It is internal," Linda said. "It is about me," I said. "And if I am going to be accused of harassment, I need to know exactly what I am being accused of, unless you want me to bring my lawyer into the next meeting." It was a bluff. I didn't have a lawyer yet, but it worked. Linda hesitated, then made a photocopy. I walked out of the building with the report in my purse. The morning sun hit my face, but I felt cold. This was not a prank. This was a tactical strike. My parents knew I had seen the contract. They knew I had questions about the timeline, so they were discrediting the witness. If I started talking about missing years and forged documents, they could point to this HR file and say, "See, she is unstable. She lost her job because of it." I went home, but I didn't rest. I turned my dining room table into a war room. I laid out everything I had. The screenshot of the "stay home" text, the photo of the contract from the party, the picture of the hospital bracelet, and now, the HR report. I needed to build a timeline. I wasn't trying to win an argument anymore. I was trying to survive a coordinated narrative that was designed to erase me. I opened my laptop and logged into the state's digital records portal. I requested everything I could legally access with my own social security number: birth certificate, driver's license history, voter registration. Then I went to the basement storage unit where I kept my old school boxes. My parents had dumped them on me years ago when they downsized to a condo before buying the lake house. "Take your junk," my father had said. I dragged the plastic bins upstairs. I sifted through old report cards, art projects, and permission slips. I found a gap. In my junior year of high school, the year 2014, the year of the accident, my file was thin. There were no report cards for the fall semester. There was a letter from the school acknowledging a home study arrangement for medical reasons. But I hadn't been sick. I remembered that autumn. I had been sent to my Aunt Carol's house in Wisconsin. My parents had told me it was because Aunt Carol was depressed and needed company. I had attended a small local school there for 3 months. I dug deeper into the box. I found a permission slip for a field trip in Wisconsin. The signature at the bottom read, "David Bailey." I stared at it. The signature was too loopy, too careful. My father had a sharp, jagged signature. This looked like someone trying to copy it. Then I found a carbon copy of a transfer form. It was dated October 15th, 2014. One day after the date on the hospital bracelet I had seen at the party. The form authorized my transfer to the Wisconsin School District. The reason listed was family hardship. But at the bottom, where the parent's signature should be, there was something else, a small initial that didn't belong to my father or my mother. It was an L. I sat back, the paper trembling in my hand. Lauren had signed this? No, that didn't make sense. She would have been 16, unless someone else with a name starting with L had signed it, or unless it wasn't a signature at all. But a mark. I picked up my phone. I needed to hear their voices. I needed to hear them lie to me, so I could measure the distance between their words and the truth. I put the phone on speaker and dialed my father. He answered on the first ring, which meant they were expecting me to call. They probably knew HR had sent me home. "Allison," he said. His voice was calm, reasonable. The voice of a man dealing with a hysterical customer. "We heard you left work early. Is everything okay?" "You know exactly why I left work," I said. "You reported me." "We did no such thing," my mother chimed in. She was on the line too. "We are just worried about you. Mrs. Gable called us after the party. She said you were saying very strange things, introducing yourself to people who didn't need to be involved." "I introduced myself as your daughter," I said. "Why is that strange?" "It is the aggression. Allison," my father said, "the way you are acting, breaking into the library, photographing private documents, that is not normal behavior. That is paranoia." "I saw the contract, Dad," I said. "I saw the hospital bracelet behind the photo. October 14th, 2014. Who was in the hospital?" There was a silence on the line, heavy and thick. "Nobody was in the hospital," my mother said, her voice rising in pitch. "You are imagining things. This is exactly what we mean. You are obsessing over details that don't exist." "I have a picture of the bracelet," I said. "And I have the transfer form sending me to Wisconsin the next day. Why was I sent away? What happened that night?" "You were difficult," my father snapped. The reasonable mask slipped for a second. "You were acting out. We needed space. We were trying to protect the family stability." "Protect it from what?" I asked. "Allison, listen to me," my father said, his voice dropping back into that smooth, transactionary tone. You are clearly stressed. You are overworked. This logistics job, it is grinding you down. Look, your mother and I have been talking. We think you need a break. A real one. A break, I repeated. We are prepared to help you, he said. We can set up a trust. $50,000. You could take a year, go to Europe, go back to school. Just get away from Chicago. Get away from the stress. And get away from Lauren? I asked. It would be best for everyone if you gave Lauren some space right now, my mother said. She is under a lot of pressure. She doesn't need your drama. $50,000, I said. That is the price? That is what I am worth to you? You are trying to pay me to disappear. It is a gift, my mother cried. God, you twist everything. We are trying to help you. I don't want your money, I said. I want to know why my signature is on documents for a foundation I never heard of until yesterday. We are done discussing this, my father said. If you continue to harass us, Allison, we will have to take further steps to protect Lauren. Do not go near her. Do not go near the foundation. The line went dead. I sat there, listening to the dial tone. They hadn't denied the contract. They hadn't denied the foundation. They had just offered me a bribe to stop looking at it. $50,000 was a lot of money, but it was also a confession. You don't pay $50,000 to fix a misunderstanding. You pay $50,000 to bury a body. I needed someone who wasn't on the payroll, someone who had been there in 2014 but wasn't part of the brand. I thought of Mrs. Higgins. She was our next-door neighbor in the old house in the suburbs, a widow who spent her days gardening and watching the street from her bay window. She saw everything. My parents used to call her the surveillance camera. I found her number in an old neighborhood directory I had saved in my contacts. I didn't know if she was still alive. I dialed. It rang 4 times. Hello? A frail, scratchy voice. Mrs. Higgins? I said. This is Allison Bailey, from next door. Allison? Her voice brightened instantly. Oh, my goodness, the quiet one. I haven't seen you in years. How are you, dear? I am fine. Mrs. Higgins, I know this is out of the blue, but I have a question about the old neighborhood, about the time right before we moved. Oh, the moving, she clucked. That was a chaotic time. Your father was in such a rush, selling the house in a month? I always thought that was strange. Mrs. Higgins, do you remember a night in October of that year? 2014. There might have been an ambulance. The line went quiet. I remember, she said softly. The lights woke me up, red and blue, flashing all over my hydrangeas. It was late, maybe 2 a.m. Did you see who they took? I asked. My hand was gripping the phone so tight my knuckles were white. Well, that was the odd thing, she said. They didn't take anyone in the ambulance. The ambulance left empty, but then a police car left, and then your father's car left, speeding like a demon. And me? I asked. Did you see me? I saw you leaving with your aunt the next morning, she said. You look so small. Allison, carrying that big suitcase, your mother was on the porch, crying. But she wasn't looking at you. She was looking back inside the house. Inside the house? Yes, at the upstairs window. Lauren's room. The curtains were drawn, but the light was on. I remember thinking, why is the sick one staying and the healthy one leaving? You thought I was the healthy one? Oh, yes, dear. You were always the sturdy one. Lauren was the fragile girl, always getting into things she couldn't handle. She lowered her voice. I always suspected that girl was trouble. But your parents, well, they treated her like a porcelain doll. Thank you. Mrs. Higgins, I said. You have no idea how much that helps. I hung up. The ambulance left empty, the police car left, my father left speeding, and I was shipped out the next morning while my mother cried and looked at Lauren's window. It wasn't a medical emergency, it was a crime scene. And I had been the alibi, or the distraction. I needed to see Lauren, not at the house, not with our parents hovering. I needed to see her alone. I texted her. I know about the ambulance. I know it left empty. Meet me at the grind in an hour. If you don't come, I am emailing the foundation woman and asking her what she knows about October 14th, 2014. It was a gamble. If she showed this to our parents, they might actually call the police on me this time. But 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Okay, please don't email her. The grind was a coffee shop halfway between my apartment and the suburbs. I got a table in the back corner. Lauren arrived 10 minutes late. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a trench coat, looking like a celebrity trying to avoid paparazzi, or a criminal trying to avoid the feds. She sat down and took off the glasses. She looked terrible. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and her skin, usually glowing with expensive treatments, looked gray and papery. You look tired, I said. I haven't slept, she said. She didn't order coffee. She just wrapped her hands around her water glass. Mom and Dad are losing their minds. Allison, they are saying you are having a breakdown. They want to get a restraining order. Let them try, I said. I have the HR report they filed. It proves they are targeting me. I can countersue for defamation. Lauren flinched. Don't use legal words. Please, I can't handle any more legal words. Then tell me the truth, I said. What is the contract? Lauren, what did you sign? I signed everything, she whispered. The morality clause, the disclosure, if I have any public scandals, any criminal record, any history of instability, the fellowship is void, and we have to pay back the grant money, all of it, plus damages. How much money? A lot, she said. It is not just the money, it is the career, this foundation. They make people, Allison, senators, CEOs, if they drop me. I am blacklisted everywhere. So that is why I have to be erased, I said. Because I remind people that there are two of us? Because I might tell someone about the time you… What? What did you do in 2014? Lauren? Lauren looked down at the table. A tear slid down her nose. I didn't mean to, she sobbed softly. It was an accident. I took the car. I wanted to go to that party in Evanston. I was stupid. You hit someone? I asked. She nodded. Another car. A girl. She was hurt bad. God, Allison. There was so much blood. I called Dad. I didn't know what else to do. And Dad fixed it, I said. The puzzle pieces were slamming into place. How? How did he fix a car accident with a victim? He made it go away, she said. He knew people, the other driver. They settled, quietly. But the record, the police report… She stopped. She looked up at me, and her eyes were full of a terrified pity. What? I asked. What about the police report? They couldn't charge a minor without a positive ID, she said. And we look exactly alike. I felt the blood drain from my head. The room started to spin. Lauren, I said, my voice barely a whisper. What did they do? They needed a clean record for me, she said. For the future. For the gymnastics scholarships. For this, they couldn't let me have a DUI or a reckless driving charge. So who took the charge? I asked. It wasn't me. I would know if I had a criminal record. You don't have a record, she said quickly. It was diverted. Juvenile diversion. Sealed records. It goes away when you turn 18. If it goes away, why does it matter? Because the foundation digs deep, she said. They unseal things. They look for moral turpitude. If they find out I was the driver… Wait, I said. If the records are sealed, whose name is on them? Lauren didn't answer. She just stared at her water glass. Lauren, I said. Whose name is on the juvenile record? She looked up. You were never supposed to remember the paperwork. What paperwork? The night you went to Aunt Carol's, she said. Dad gave you a stack of papers to sign. He said it was for the school transfer, for the insurance. I remembered, sitting at the kitchen table at 3 a.m, groggy, confused, my father pushing papers in front of me. Sign here. Allie, just a formality. We need to get you safe. I signed a confession? I asked. The horror was so absolute it felt cold, like ice water in my veins. I admitted to the accident? They said it wouldn't hurt you, Lauren cried. Reaching for my hand, I pulled it away. They said you weren't applying to Ivy Leagues. They said you were resilient. They said it would just be a file that disappeared. They saved me. Allison. They had to. They didn't save you, I said. They framed me. I stood up. I couldn't breathe in there. The smell of coffee was making me sick. Allison, wait. Lauren stood up too. You can't tell anyone. If you tell the foundation, I lose everything. Mom and Dad could go to jail for fraud. Please, we are family. Family? I looked at her. Family doesn't make you sign a confession for a crime you didn't commit, so the star can keep shining. You let me carry this. For 10 years, I thought I was sent away because I was unlovable, but I was sent away because I was the scapegoat. I am sorry, she wept. I am so sorry. Sorry isn't a legal defense, I said. I walked out of the coffee shop. I left her crying at the table. I didn't care anymore. I drove straight to a strip mall law office I had passed 100 times. Miller Associates, family law, civil litigation. I didn't have an appointment. I walked in and told the receptionist I had an emergency involving identity fraud and a morality clause. She got me in to see a lawyer named Mr. Miller within 20 minutes. He was a weary-looking man with coffee stains on his tie. But he listened. He listened as I told him about the party, the contract, the HR report, and the confession Lauren had just made. When I finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Ms. Bailey, he said, if what you are saying is true, your parents didn't just play favorites. They committed multiple felonies, perjury, obstruction of justice, fraud, and if your signature is on a juvenile admission of guilt, even if it is sealed, it exists. And if the foundation finds it and thinks it is you are fine. But if they find it and realize it was a cover-up for her, what happens? Then you are all liable, he said. You for signing it, them for orchestrating it. But here is the problem. You signed it. You were a minor. But you signed it, proving you didn't know what it was. That is hard, especially 10 years later. So I am trapped? Not trapped, he said. But you need proof, hard proof, not just your sister's tears in a coffee shop. You need the document. You need that sealed file. And you need to know exactly what the foundation knows. They asked me if I signed away the rights. I said, Mr. Miller's eyes narrowed. That is a very specific phrase. Signing away rights usually refers to a settlement. Did the victim sue? Lauren said they settled quietly. If they used your identity for the accident, Mr. Miller said slowly, they might have used your identity for the settlement too. You might have legally agreed to a non-disclosure agreement regarding an accident you were never in. I felt sick. Can I get the records? We can petition the court to unseal your juvenile file, he said. It will take time, and it will alert your parents immediately. Do it, I said. I went home feeling like I was walking through a minefield. Every piece of paper I had ever signed, every form, every permission slip, I questioned all of it. My entire identity was a patchwork of my parents' lies. I checked my mailbox in the lobby of my building. There was a single white envelope, no return address, no stamp. It had been hand-delivered. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a photograph. It was an old picture. We must have been 7 or 8. Me and Lauren, sitting on the front porch of the old house, wearing matching sundresses. We were smiling. But someone had taken a thick red permanent marker to the photo. They had drawn a heavy, violent circle around my face. The ink had bled through the paper, and across the bottom, in block letters that looked jagged and angry. They had written, "Don't ruin this." It wasn't a warning from a concerned parent anymore. It was a threat from someone who had everything to lose. I looked at the red circle around my face. It looked like a target. I went upstairs and locked my door. I wedged a chair under the handle. I took a picture of the threat and added it to my digital file. They wanted me to stay home? They wanted me to be invisible? Too late. I was already the ghost in their machine, and I was about to start haunting them for real. The red marker on the photograph wasn't just vandalism, it was a revelation. I stared at the jagged circle around my face, the ink bleeding into the glossy paper of my childhood, and I finally understood the nature of the war I was fighting. This wasn't about a birthday party, it wasn't about my mother's narcissism or my father's favoritism. Those were just the symptoms. The disease was strategic. My family wasn't trying to hurt me because they hated me. They were trying to neutralize me because I was a liability. I was a loose thread in a tapestry they had spent a decade weaving, and if I pulled too hard, the whole thing would unravel. The escalation, the HR report, the bribe, the threat, suggested that the cost of that unraveling was measurable. It had a dollar figure. I taped the defaced photo to my wall next to the hospital bracelet. It was no longer a scrapbook of trauma. It was an evidence board. I spent the next 48 hours doing what I did best: logistics. I treated the Bailey family secrets like a supply chain disruption. I needed to know the source, the route, and the value of the cargo. I started with the Sterling Foundation. The woman at the party had been terrified of me, not because I was an uninvited guest, but because I represented a breach of contract. I dug into their website. It wasn't just a charity, it was an incubator. They ran a program called the Sterling Ambassadors, a high-prestige fellowship that granted massive funding to young professionals in exchange for brand alignment. I found the terms of service buried in a PDF on their donor page. The language was draconian. Ambassadors serve as the public face of the foundation's values. Any conduct, past or present, that contradicts the foundation's standards of integrity, stability, and legal standing is grounds for immediate termination and full repayment of all disbursed funds. Full repayment. I did the math. If Lauren had been receiving support from them since college, which the timeline suggested, we were talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Tuition, living expenses, the seed money for her boutique marketing firm. If she was terminated for fraud, my parents wouldn't just be embarrassed, they would be bankrupt. I called Mr. Miller, my lawyer. I need to know what they have on me, I said. If my parents used my identity to clear Lauren's name, that means my name is somewhere in the foundation's files. I will draft a request, Miller said. His voice sounded like gravel and old coffee. We will ask for all documents pertaining to Allison Bailey. If they have your signature on a disclosure form, they have to produce it. He sent the letter that afternoon. The response came back with terrifying speed. Arriving in my inbox the next morning, it was not a yield. It was a deflection. Dear Mr. Miller, regarding your inquiry for files related to Ms. Allison Bailey, please be advised that all documents held by the Foundation regarding familial disclosures were submitted and verified by the primary grant recipient, Lauren Bailey, with the attached consent of relevant parties. Due to privacy protocols, we cannot release third-party consents without a new, notarized identity verification, as the original consents are already on file. I read the email 3 times. Verified by the primary grant recipient, with the attached consent of relevant parties. They are saying I already consented. I told Miller over the phone. They are saying they have a document, signed by me, giving Lauren permission to disclose or hide my history. That is what it implies, Miller said. It means someone didn't just forge your name on a traffic ticket 10 years ago. It means they are actively maintaining the forgery. They are resubmitting your signature every year to keep the grant active. I need that document, I said. They won't give it to us without a fight, Miller said. But if you can find the original, or a copy, I know where it is, I said. My parents were hoarders of paperwork. My father believed that digitizing files was a security risk. He kept everything, tax returns, deeds, medical records, in a fireproof filing system in the master bedroom closet. If there was a master copy of the lies they were telling, it was in that closet. I couldn't go alone. If I went alone, They would claim I broke in. They would claim I was violent. They would call the police and use it to validate the unstable narrative they were building at my workplace. I needed a witness, a shield. I called Sarah. "I need you to come to tea," I said. "Tea?" Sarah asked. "My parents invited me to stop by to pick up some old boxes they found." I lied. "I want you to come with me. If there is a witness, my mother won't be able to scream. She will have to play the hostess." "I am in," Sarah said. "I will wear my pearls. I will be uncomfortably polite." We drove to the condo in Lincoln Park on a Tuesday evening. My parents had downsized from the suburban house to this sleek, modern fortress of beige and glass. When I rang the bell, my mother answered the door. For a split second, I saw the snarl on her face, the readiness to fight. Then she saw Sarah standing behind me, holding a potted orchid. The transformation was instantaneous. Her face smoothed out, her eyes crinkled. Her mouth formed a perfect, welcoming O. "Allison!" she cried, reaching out to hug me, though her body remained stiff as a board. "And Sarah, what a delightful surprise. I didn't know you were bringing company." "I thought Sarah could help me carry the boxes," I said, stepping into the foyer. "You know my back." Of course, my father boomed, coming down the hall. He shook Sarah's hand with aggressive enthusiasm. "Good to see you. Sarah, how is the advertising world?" "It is marketing, actually," Sarah said, smiling. "But it is great. Mr. Bailey, Allison has been telling me how busy you both are with the foundation work." My father flinched. Just a micro-expression, a tightening of the jaw, before the smile returned. "Oh, yes, very busy. Wonderful work. Philanthropy is exhausting, but rewarding." They led us into the living room. My mother served tea on her good china. She asked Sarah about her engagement, her dog, her Pilates class. She was syrupy sweet, performing the role of the doting mother so perfectly that if I hadn't seen the stay-home text, I might have believed her. But the moment Sarah asked to use the restroom, the temperature in the room dropped 30 degrees. My mother leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that sounded like a scalpel cutting silk. "What are you doing here, Allison?" "I came for my things," I said, sipping my tea. "Like you asked." "I didn't ask you to come today," she hissed. "And bringing her? Do you think that protects you?" "I think it keeps us all civil," I said. "People won't believe you, you know," she said. She wasn't looking at me. She was picking a piece of lint off her pristine white trousers. "Whatever you think you found, whatever story you are cooking up, nobody cares. Lauren is a star. You are you." "What am I?" "Mom," I asked. "You are the one who struggles," she said. "That is the story. That is what people see. If you try to drag her down, you will just look jealous. You will look pathetic." "I am going to check the closet for those boxes," I said, standing up. "Sit down," my father commanded, his voice low. "Sarah will be back in 30 seconds, I said. "Do you want to explain to her why I am not allowed to look for my childhood yearbooks?" My father hesitated. He looked at the hallway where Sarah had disappeared. He knew the game. He couldn't cause a scene in front of a witness. "Make it quick," he grunted. I walked down the hallway, past the guest bathroom where I could hear Sarah running the tap loudly to cover me. I slipped into the master bedroom. I didn't have much time. I went straight to the walk-in closet. The heavy steel file box was on the top shelf. Right where I knew it would be, I pulled it down. It was locked. I didn't panic. I knew my father. He used the same 4-digit code for everything. The last 4 digits of his social security number. I spun the dials. Click. The lid popped open. I riffled through the hanging folders. Tax returns 2020. Insurance. Deeds. I went back. Way back. Medical. Legal. L. I pulled the folder marked Legal. L. It was thick. I flipped past the recent contracts with the foundation. I went to the back. To 2014. And there it was. A document titled Release of Liability and Assumption of Fault. It was dated October 16th, 2014. I scanned the text. It was a settlement agreement regarding an incident at the Oakwood Autumn Gala, a private event. The undersigned admits to being the sole operator of the vehicle. The undersigned accepts full financial and legal responsibility for injuries sustained by the claimant. And at the bottom, a signature, Allison Bailey. It was my name. It was a shaky, terrified version of my signature. But it was there, but I hadn't signed this. On October 16th, 2014, I was in Wisconsin, sitting in my Aunt Carol's kitchen, crying over a bowl of oatmeal because I missed my home. I looked at the notary stamp. State of Illinois, County of Cook. The notary's signature was there, a man named Robert Vance. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture, high resolution. Then I turned the page. There was another document attached, a copy of a police report supplement. Supplemental report. Driver identification. Witness statements confirm the driver was the twin identified as Allison Bailey. No charges filed due to settlement and juvenile diversion program entry. Witness statements, I whispered. My parents had told the police it was me. They had told the witnesses it was me. They had constructed a reality where I was the criminal. I thought I told you to make it quick. I froze. My father was standing in the doorway of the closet. He wasn't angry. He wasn't red-faced or shouting. He looked suddenly, terribly old. His shoulders were slumped, and his hands hung uselessly at his sides. "Dad," I said, holding up the file. I wasn't even in the state. He didn't move to take the file. He just leaned against the doorframe. "We had to, Allison," he said. His voice was pleading, a wheezing sound that made my stomach turn. "You have to understand. Lauren, she couldn't handle it. The guilt, the police, she would have shattered. You know how she is." "So you gave it to me?" I asked. "You gave me the guilt? You gave me the record?" "You were always so strong," he said. He said it like it was a compliment. "You were the resilient one. We knew you could take it. We knew you would land on your feet. And look at you. You did. You have a great job. You are independent. It didn't hurt you." "It didn't hurt me?" I stepped out of the closet. The file clutched to my chest. "You erased me from my own life. You sent me away for 3 months to hide a crime I didn't commit. You made me feel like I was the broken one, the difficult one, just so I wouldn't ask questions. You gaslit me for a decade. Dad?" "It was a mistake," he said. "The accident. It was just a teenage mistake. Why destroy her future for one bad night?" "It wasn't a bad night," I said, looking at the settlement papers. "This says there was a victim. Serious injury. Who did she hurt?" "A boy," my father whispered. "At the party. She was backing out. She didn't see him. It crushed his leg. He had a football scholarship. It was a mess. Allison, a nightmare. We paid for everything. His surgery, his rehab, his college. We settled it. You paid him off," I said. "And you used my name to do it because if the golden child had a mark on her record, she wouldn't get the foundation money." "We did it for the family," he said. "For all of us." "No," I said. "You did it for the brand." I heard a gasp from the hallway behind him. My father turned. I looked past him. Lauren was standing there. She must have come in the back door. She was wearing a yoga outfit, holding a green juice, looking the picture of health and wellness, but her face was ashen. She was staring at the file in my hands. "Lauren," my father said, stepping toward her. "You said she knew," Lauren whispered. Her voice was barely audible. She looked at our father, her eyes wide with horror. "You told me Allison agreed. You told me she signed the papers before she went to Wisconsin." "Lauren, honey," my father started, reaching for her. "Did she know?" Lauren screamed. It was a sound I had never heard her make. Raw, ugly, uncurated. "Did she know you were using her name?" My father didn't answer. He couldn't. Lauren dropped her juice. The bottle shattered on the hardwood floor, green liquid splattering across the expensive rug. She collapsed to her knees. putting her hands over her face. "I thought you agreed," she sobbed, looking up at me through her fingers. "Allison, I swear, they told me you wanted to help. They told me you said it was okay because I was weak." I looked at her. I looked at the sister who had been the center of the universe for 25 years. And for the first time, I didn't see a rival. I saw a victim. My parents hadn't just sacrificed me. They had groomed her. They had taught her that she was too fragile to face consequences. They had taught her that her image was worth more than her integrity. They had built a cage of gold and lies around her and called it love. I was the buffer. I was the one designed to absorb the impact so the precious cargo didn't break. But looking at her now, sobbing in a puddle of green juice, I realized she was broken anyway. The guilt had just been rotting her from the inside out. "I didn't know," I said softly. "But I know now." "What are you going to do?" my father asked. He wasn't pleading anymore. He was calculating. "If you release those papers, Allison, if you go to the foundation, it is all over. The money, the career, the house, everything goes away." "You should have thought of that before you forged my signature," I said. "Sarah is waiting for me," I added. "If I don't walk out of here in 10 seconds, she is coming to find me, and she has a very big mouth." My father stepped aside. He looked defeated, but his eyes were cold. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. I walked past Lauren. I wanted to help her up. I wanted to tell her it would be okay. But I couldn't. She was part of it. Even if she didn't know the full extent, she had lived in the sunshine while I sat in the shade, and she had never once asked why. I grabbed Sarah from the living room. My mother was mid-sentence, talking about a charity auction. "We are leaving," I said. My mother looked at my face, then at the folder under my arm. She went pale. She didn't say a word. She didn't try to stop us. We walked out to the car. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't get the keys out of my purse. "Drive," I told Sarah, tossing her the keys. "What happened?" Sarah asked, starting the engine. "You look like you saw a ghost." "I found the body," I said. We drove back to my apartment. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I felt a cold, hard clarity. I had the proof. I had the motive. I had the confession. But I wasn't going to just post it on the internet. I wasn't going to let them spin this as a family dispute. I wasn't going to let them paint me as the jealous sister taking down the successful one. I needed transparency. I needed a setting where they couldn't lie. "I am not going to sue them," I told Sarah as we sat in my kitchen. "Not yet." "Why not?" Sarah asked. "They stole your identity." "Because a lawsuit is quiet," I said. "They can settle. They can seal the records again. They have money. They have lawyers who specialize in making things go away. So what do you do?" "I force them to tell the truth," I said. "The foundation is having a gala next week, the one Lauren is speaking at, the one where they celebrate their ambassador. You are going to crash it?" "No," I said. "I am going to get invited." I spent the next day formulating a plan. I would approach the compliance officer at the foundation, not the scary woman, but the one above her, the one who had to follow the law. I would present the evidence quietly. I would offer them a choice: investigate this internally and announce a pause in the partnership, or I go to the press with proof that they are funding a fraud. I was drafting the email when the doorbell rang. It wasn't a courier, it was a process server, a man in a windbreaker who looked bored. "Allison Bailey?" "Yes." "Service for you." He handed me a thick envelope and walked away. I opened it in the hallway. It was a cease and desist order. To Allison Bailey. From the law offices of Spector Ross, representing Lauren Bailey and the Bailey Family Trust. Defamation, extortion, and harassment. I scanned the document. It was brutal. It accused me of stealing confidential family documents. It accused me of attempting to extort money from my parents. The $50,000 they offered me was framed as a demand I made. It accused me of a smear campaign against a public figure, and the plaintiff wasn't my father, it wasn't my mother. The plaintiff listed at the top of the page was Lauren Bailey, my twin, the girl who had been sobbing on the floor 24 hours ago, the girl who claimed she didn't know. Now, she was suing me. I realized then that the sobbing girl on the floor had been real, but the machine she lived in was stronger. My parents had gotten to her. They had terrified her. They had convinced her that the only way to survive was to destroy me first. They had turned my sister into a weapon. I looked at the legal threat. It was meant to scare me. It was meant to make me drop the file and run. But they had made a critical error. They thought I was the same person I was in 2014. They thought I was the girl who went to Wisconsin. They thought I was the buffer. I walked into my apartment and picked up the phone. I called Mr. Miller. "Did you get it?" he asked. He had been CC'd. "I got it," I said. "This complicates things," Miller said. "They are going on the offensive. They are trying to bury you in legal fees before you can get the truth out." "It doesn't complicate things," I said, looking at the red circle on the photo on my wall. "It clarifies them." "How so?" "They just put it in writing," I said. "They just claimed in a legal filing that the documents I found are stolen confidential property, which means they just admitted the documents are real." There was a silence on the line. Then I heard a dry chuckle. "You are a dangerous woman, Allison," Miller said. "I learned from the best," I said. "What is the next move?" "Accept the service," I said. "And then tell the foundation I have something they need to see. We are not going to court. Mr. Miller, we are going to the gala." I hung up. I looked at the cease and desist. It was signed by Lauren. "I am sorry." She had said, "I thought you agreed." She had said, it didn't matter what she thought anymore. She had made her choice. She had chosen the brand over the blood. And now, I was going to burn the brand to the ground. "This is not a lawsuit, Mr. Miller said, tossing the heavy document onto his desk. "It is a bear trap." He leaned back in his creaking leather chair, rubbing his eyes. Outside his office window, the gray Chicago sky was threatening rain, matching the mood in the room perfectly. "They want you to step in it," he continued. "The cease and desist is designed to do two things. First, it scares you into silence. Most people see a legal header and freeze. Second, if you don't freeze, they want you to lash out. They want you to send a furious email, leave a screaming voicemail, or post something rash on social media. The moment you do that, they have evidence of harassment. They are building a case to paint you as the aggressor." I looked at the paper. Defamation, extortion. The words were heavy, ugly things. "They are trying to buy time," I said. "They need to stabilize Lauren's position with the foundation before I can prove the fraud." "Exactly," Miller said. "They are betting that you are too emotional to be strategic. They are betting on the crazy twin narrative." "Then they are going to lose that bet," I said. I left his office with a plan, but the world outside felt different. It was colder. The city I had lived in for a decade suddenly felt like enemy territory. My parents had money, connections, and a lifetime of practice at controlling the narrative. I had a folder of stolen documents and a lawyer who worked out of a strip mall. The chill followed me into my workplace the next morning. Usually, the logistics department was a noisy, chaotic hub of banter and problem-solving. But when I walked in, the conversation died. It didn't taper off naturally. It was severed. Two colleagues standing by the coffee machine suddenly found their shoes fascinating. I walked to my desk. My access badge worked, which was a relief, but my login was slower than usual. At 10 o'clock, my manager, Dave, stopped by my cubicle. Dave was a good guy, a man who coached Little League and usually asked me about my weekend. Today, he wouldn't look me in the eye. "Allison," he said, shifting his weight, "can we chat in my office for a second?" I followed him. He didn't close the door, which was a bad sign. It meant he wanted witnesses to see that nothing untoward was happening. "We are going to shift the Darker Sky project to Kevin temporarily," he said. referencing the major supply chain overhaul I had been leading for 6 months. "Why?" I asked. "I am 2 weeks ahead of schedule." "We just want to lighten your load," Dave said, his eyes fixing on a point somewhere over my left shoulder. "HR mentioned there might be some personal things going on. We want to make sure you have the bandwidth to handle whatever you need to handle." "I have the bandwidth," I said. "I am doing my job. Dave, has my performance slipped?" "No," he said quickly. "Not yet, but we are being proactive. It is just temporary. Allison, just until things settle down." I understood then. The concern filed by my parents hadn't just been a warning shot. It was a contagion. It had infected my professional reputation. I wasn't the reliable coordinator anymore. I was the risk. My parents had successfully exported their family dynamic into my career. To Dave, I was now the difficult one, the one who needed managing. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I remembered Miller's advice about the bear trap. "I understand," I said calmly. "Please send me that in an email, confirming that the reassignment is not performance-based." Dave looked surprised. "Sure, of course." I walked back to my desk. I didn't try to win anyone over. I didn't try to explain that my parents were gaslighting me. That would only sound like more drama. Instead, I became a recording device. I documented the conversation with Dave in my personal log. I saved every email to an external hard drive. I screenshotted the "stay home" text again, ensuring it was backed up in 3 places. I was done trying to persuade people with my feelings. Feelings were malleable. Facts were concrete. I needed to bypass the noise. I needed to go to the source of the money. I spent the lunch hour digging into the leadership structure of the Sterling Foundation. The woman at the party, the one who had mistaken me for Lauren, was likely a program director or a liaison. She was invested in the success of the ambassador program. She wouldn't want to hear about fraud. She would want to bury it. I needed someone whose job depended on following the rules. I found him. Simon Wright, the Foundation's Chief Compliance Officer. His LinkedIn profile showed a background in forensic accounting and corporate governance. He wasn't a brand manager. He was a watchdog. I sent him an email from my personal account. Subject: Identity Verification Inquiry. Lauren Bailey, Grant Portfolio. Dear Mr. Wright, I am writing to verify the existence of a third-party consent form attached to the file of Ms. Lauren Bailey as the individual whose identity is referenced in the documentation. I have reason to believe my signature was used without authorization to satisfy the Foundation's disclosure requirements. I am available to verify my identity in person. It was dry, bureaucratic, and terrifyingly specific. It was the kind of email that a compliance officer could not ignore without being negligent. He replied within 40 minutes. "Ms. Bailey, can you come to our downtown office tomorrow at 9 in the morning?" The Sterling Foundation's offices were in a glass needle of a skyscraper that looked down on the rest of the city. I wore my sharpest blazer, a dark navy that made me look serious, not festive. I pulled my hair back tight. I wasn't trying to look like Lauren today. I was trying to look like the person who could end her. The receptionist led me to a conference room that smelled of lemon polish and money. Simon Wright was waiting. He was a man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of face that gave nothing away. He didn't offer me coffee. He had a file open in front of him. "Ms. Bailey," he said. He looked at me, then at a photo in the file. Lauren's headshot. He noted the resemblance, but he didn't smile. "You raised a serious issue in your email." "I raised a fact," I said. "My name is Allison Bailey. I am Lauren's twin sister. I have never signed a document for this foundation, yet I was told by one of your representatives that my rights were signed away." Wright tapped a pen against the table. "We have a document on file," he said carefully. "It is a familial disclosure waiver. It states that all immediate family members have agreed to the privacy policies and image standards required for our ambassadors. It also includes a clause regarding prior legal entanglements." "And there is a signature for me?" I asked. There is. It is a forgery, I said. Wright went still. That is a heavy accusation. I can prove it, I said. I can provide you with samples of my signature from the date in question. I can provide you with travel records showing I was not in the state when certain other documents I believe you used to vet Lauren, were signed. Specifically, a settlement agreement from October of 2014. Wright's eyes flickered. I had hit the target. He knew about the settlement. It was the skeleton in Lauren's closet that they had papered over. We are aware of the traffic incident, Wright said, his voice dropping. It was disclosed as a minor infraction involving a sibling. The Foundation was told that the liability was assumed by the sister, you. I didn't assume it, I said. I was framed for it. And now, my identity is being used to maintain her standing in your program. Wright closed the file. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. When he looked up, the corporate mask had slipped just enough to reveal a very worried man. Ms. Bailey, he said, do you know what the penalty is for misrepresentation in our grant agreements? I read the terms, I said. Termination, repayment. It is immediate, he said. The morality and truth clause is the cornerstone of the Sterling brand. We invest in leaders. If a leader starts their tenure with a lie, the investment is void. If what you are saying is true, we would be obligated to claw back every dollar, and we would be obligated to issue a public statement explaining why the partnership ended. I know, I said. Why are you telling me this? He asked. This will destroy your sister's career and your parents' financial situation. Because they are suing me, I said. They are trying to paint me as mentally unstable to discredit me before I can speak. I am not unstable. Mr. Wright, I am a supply chain manager with a credit score of 800 and a mortgage. I don't want a tabloid war. I don't want to be the crazy twin on the news. I leaned forward. I am offering you a deal. I will give you the proof, the real timeline, the handwriting analysis, the witness contact from the neighbor. I will give it all to you quietly. You launch an internal investigation. You verify it. And then you end the partnership on your terms. You don't have to name me. You don't have to air the dirty laundry about the accident. You just have to stop funding the lie. Wright looked at me for a long time. He was calculating the risk, if he ignored me, and I went to the press. The Foundation looked complicit. If he listened to me, he lost a star ambassador, but he saved the Foundation's integrity. Bring me the proof, he said. I will open a file. I have copies with me, I said, sliding a thick envelope across the mahogany table. I never come to a meeting unprepared. I walked out of the building feeling lighter, but also sicker. I had just pulled the pin. The explosion wasn't instantaneous. It would take days for Wright to verify everything, but it was inevitable. My phone buzzed as I stepped onto the sidewalk. It was Lauren. Can we meet? Please. No parents. Just us. I hesitated. My lawyer would tell me not to go. My brain told me it was a trap, but my heart, the part of me that remembered sharing a bunk bed in a secret language, couldn't ignore it. Where? I typed. The park by the lake, the bench where we used to feed the ducks. It was a neutral ground, open, public. I found her sitting on the bench, staring out at the gray water. She wasn't wearing the Lauren Bailey costume, no sequins, no blowout, no designer sunglasses. She was wearing a baggy gray sweatshirt and leggings. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Her face was bare, revealing the dark circles under her eyes and the pale, translucent quality of her skin. She looked like she was 12 again. I sat down on the other end of the bench. I didn't say hello. They made me sign the cease and desist, she said. Not looking at me. Her voice was flat, hollow. Dad said if I didn't, Mr. Spector couldn't protect the trust. He said you were out of control. And you believed him? I asked. I don't know what I believe anymore, she said. She turned to me, and her eyes were red-rimmed. I feel like I am living inside a script. Allison, every day. I wake up, And I have to remember my lines. I am the ambassador. I am the success. I am the only child. You are not an only child, I said. I am right here. I know, she whispered. But that is the line. Singular focus. Undiluted potential. Mom drilled it into me. She said having a twin made me less special. She said it split the attention. So you let them erase me, I said. Because you wanted the attention. Lauren flinched. She pulled her knees up to her chest. It wasn't just the attention, she said. It was safety. Safety? I laughed. A harsh sound. I was the one who got sent away. Lauren, I was the one who took the fall. How were you not safe? Because when you were gone, she said, looking me dead in the eye. They stopped looking for flaws in me. The words hung in the cold air between us. What do you mean? I asked. When we were together, she said. Mom was always comparing. Allison is stronger. Allison is smarter. Allison doesn't cry. I was the weak one. I was the one who needed help. But when you were gone, I was just Lauren. I was enough. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to compete with you. I could just be their daughter. I stared at her. I had spent my whole life thinking she was the golden child, basking in the light. I never realized that the light was a spotlight, hot and blinding, and that she was terrified of stepping out of it. I liked being the only one in the photos, she admitted, her voice trembling. I know it is sick. I know it is cruel. But looking at those pictures, it felt like a version of life where I wasn't the second best copy. It felt like I was whole. It was a devastating admission. It wasn't melodramatic villainy. It was just human weakness. She had sold me out not because she hated me, but because erasing me made her feel real. That is the saddest thing I have ever heard, I said quietly. I know, she said. She wiped her nose with her sleeve. And now I am going to lose it all. The foundation. They are asking questions. Dad says you are poisoning them. I am telling them the truth, I said. There is a difference. If they pull the funding, Allison, I don't know who I am without it. My whole life is this brand. I don't have a job. I don't have skills. I just have this image. Then maybe it is time to find out who you are, I said. Without the script. She looked at me. And for a moment, I saw a flicker of hope, a desire to let it all burn down so she could stop acting. I am scared, she said. You should be, I said. Mom and Dad aren't going to let you go easily. You are their investment. They want to have dinner, she said. Tonight. They want to fix this. They sent me to ask you. A reconciliation dinner? I asked. They said we need to sit down as a family, Lauren said, before it goes too far. I looked at the water. I knew it wasn't a reconciliation. It was a negotiation. They realized the stick, the lawsuit, hadn't worked, so now they were bringing out the carrot. I will come, I said. But not to fix it, to finish it. The dinner was held at the condo. The atmosphere was stifling. The table was set with the heavy silver, the room lit by candles that cast long, dancing shadows against the beige walls. My mother was wearing a cashmere cardigan and a tight smile. My father was pouring wine with a hand that shook slightly. Lauren sat between them, staring at her plate, looking like a prisoner of war. We are so glad you came, Allison, my father said, passing me the bread basket. We know things have been tense, but we are a family. Families fight. Families also forgive. Cut to the chase, Dad, I said. I am not here for the risotto, my father sighed. He put down the wine bottle. We want to make this right, he said. We know you feel unappreciated. We know we have asked a lot of you over the years. You asked me to take a felony charge, I said. We protected you from the consequences of that charge, my mother interjected smoothly. And now, we want to help you move forward. We know you have student loans. Graduate school was expensive, wasn't it? I went still. I have 60,000 left. We can clear that, my father said. He pulled a checkbook out of his jacket pocket. We can write a check tonight, $60,000, clean slate. You can be debt-free. And what do I have to do? I asked. Just sign a new agreement, my mother said. She slid a document across the table. It wasn't a check. It was a non-disclosure agreement. It just formalizes what we have always known, that family business stays in the family. You agree to withdraw any claims made to the foundation. You agree to cease communication with Mr. Wright. You know his name, I said. We have our sources, my mother said. So, do we have a deal? Your freedom from debt? For our peace of mind? I looked at the checkbook. I looked at the NDA. It was a tempting offer. $60,000 would change my life. I could buy a house. I could travel. But then I looked at Lauren. She wasn't looking at the money. She was looking at me, waiting to see if I would sell her out again, or if I would sell myself out. No, I said. My mother's smile faltered. Excuse me? I don't want your money, I said. And I can't withdraw my claims to Mr. Wright? Why not? My father demanded, his voice hardening. Because I already gave him the evidence, I said. I met with him this morning. I gave him the police report. I gave him the handwriting samples. I gave him the witness statement. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of oxygen leaving a room. My father dropped the checkbook. It hit the table with a soft slap. You did what? He whispered. I told the truth, I said. The investigation is already open. Dad, you can't buy it off. My mother stood up. She didn't scream. She didn't throw a glass. Her face went completely blank, devoid of any emotion, cold and smooth as marble. It was a terrifying transformation. She looked at me not as a daughter, but as an obstacle that had to be removed. You stupid, selfish girl, she said. Her voice was quiet, conversational. Do you have any idea what you have done? I stopped the lie, I said. You destroyed your sister, she said. And for what? Jealousy? Spite? Integrity, I said. My mother laughed. It was a dry, rattling sound. Integrity, she mocked. You think the world cares about your integrity? You think they will hail you as a hero? No, we will control this story. Allison, if the foundation pulls the funding, we will say it was a mutual decision, but we will make sure everyone knows why it happened. She leaned over the table, her eyes locking onto mine. We will make sure you look like you did this for attention, she hissed. We will release the medical records we have, the ones from the therapist you saw when you were 12. We will paint you as the obsessed, stalker sister who couldn't stand Lauren's success. We will ruin you, Allison. You won't just lose your job. You will lose your name. You already took my name, I said, standing up. I am just taking it back. I walked out of the dining room. My father was shouting something about ungrateful, but I didn't stop. Lauren didn't move. She just sat there, staring at the NDA, trapped between the parents who owned her and the sister who had just blown up her world. I drove home, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had done it. I had crossed the Rubicon, but the fallout hadn't started yet. The next morning, I got an email from Simon Wright. Ms. Bailey, thank you for the documents. We are reviewing them with our legal counsel. However, due to the timing, I must inform you that the Foundation is contractually obligated to proceed with the scheduled event this weekend until a final determination is made. I frowned. Scheduled event? I searched online, and there it was. The Sterling Foundation Annual Gala, Celebrating Courage. Keynote speaker, Lauren Bailey. Date, Saturday. Location, the Grand Ballroom, Chicago. It was in 2 days. A second party, a public fundraiser, a room full of donors, press, and cameras. And Lauren was set to stand on a stage and tell her story of resilience. The investigation was colliding with the performance. Wright was going to be there. My parents would be there. Lauren would be there, and if the foundation hadn't made a final determination by Saturday, then the lie was going to be broadcast live. I realized then that my work wasn't done. I couldn't just wait for an email. I had to be there. I had to witness the moment the truth hit the light. I replied to Wright, "I understand," as a material witness to the investigation. I request to attend the gala. I believe my presence may be necessary if identity verification becomes an issue during the proceedings. It was a bold request, a challenge. 3 hours later, a courier arrived at my office. Inside was a single, heavy cardstock envelope. Admit 1, Sterling Gala. I held the ticket. My parents had told me to stay home. They had told me nobody wanted me there, but now I had a ticket, and I was going to the party. The grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel was a cavern of gold light and velvet silence, designed to make everyone inside feel like they had ascended to a higher plane of existence. The chandeliers were the size of small cars, dripping with crystal. The tables were set with linens so white they hurt the eyes, and everywhere there were faces I recognized from the business pages of the newspaper: donors, politicians, captains of industry, all murmuring in low, respectful tones. I stood at the entrance, clutching the heavy cardstock of my invitation. I was wearing a black dress, simple and severe, with no jewelry. I wasn't here to sparkle. I was here to observe. "Name?" the woman at the check-in desk asked, her fingers hovering over a tablet. "Allison Bailey," I said, for the first time in my life. I didn't brace myself for the confusion. I didn't wait for the, "Oh." I didn't know Lauren had a sister or the, "Are you sure you are on the list?" The woman tapped the screen. Her eyes widened slightly as she saw the note attached to my file. "Oh," she said, looking up with a sudden, sharp professional deference. "Ms. Bailey, you are listed as a stakeholder witness for the compliance team. Mr. Wright has requested you be seated at table 4. "Thank you," I said. I walked into the room. The air smelled of expensive perfume and roasted duck. A string quartet was playing a sanitized version of a pop song in the corner. It was the perfect stage for the Bailey family performance. I saw them almost immediately. They were holding court near the center of the room, a triumvirate of perfect grooming. My father was in a tuxedo that fit him like armor, laughing at a donor's joke. My mother was shimmering in a gold gown, her hand resting possessively on Lauren's arm. And Lauren, she looked incredible. She was wearing a white silk column dress that made her look like a statue. A monument to purity and success. Her hair was swept up, exposing the long line of her neck. She was smiling, nodding, playing the role of the humble prodigy. But I knew the signs. I saw the tension in her trapezius muscles. I saw the way her fingers kept touching the diamond pendant at her throat. A nervous tic she had developed when we were 7. Then, my mother saw me. Her smile didn't fade. It froze. It became a rictus of terror. She nudged my father, her eyes locking onto me across the sea of tables. My father turned, his glass of scotch pausing halfway to his mouth. For a second, I saw the reflex kick in. I saw my father's eyes dart toward the security team standing by the exits. He wanted to signal them. He wanted to point at the intruder and have me dragged out the side door, just like he had threatened at the birthday party. But he stopped. He saw the lanyard around the neck of the man standing 5 feet away from me, a member of the Foundation's internal security team. He realized I wasn't crashing. I was sanctioned. If he made a scene now, if he called security on a guest invited by the chief compliance officer, he would be lighting the match himself. He lowered his hand. The power dynamic in the room shifted so violently, I almost felt the floor tilt. For 32 years, their power had come from their ability to exclude me. Now, my power came from the fact that I was undeniably, brilliantly, present. I walked to table 4. It was near the front, but off to the side. The perfect vantage point. Simon Wright was already there. He nodded to me, a grave, barely perceptible acknowledgement. "Ms. Bailey," he said, Thank you for coming. I wouldn't miss it, I said, sitting down, across the room. Lauren turned. She felt the change in the atmosphere, the way animals sense a drop in barometric pressure before a storm. She saw me. She was in the middle of talking to a senator, but her voice simply stopped. Her mouth hung open for a fraction of a second. The look on her face wasn't the anger of our parents. It was a complex, devastating cocktail of emotions. There was love, the reflexive, biological pull of the twin bond. There was resentment, the anger that I had blown up her safety, and there was fear, a terrified, childlike panic that asked, "What is going to happen to me?" I didn't smile at her. I just looked at her. I bore witness. She faltered, dropping her gaze. She mumbled an excuse to the senator and turned away, gripping her mother's arm as if she were drowning. The program began. The lights dimmed. A video started playing on the massive screens flanking the stage. It was a montage of Lauren's life. The life I knew was a lie. Lauren Bailey. A singular focus. I watched as images flashed by. Lauren winning the gymnastics trophy, the year I was cut from the team because my parents wouldn't drive two of us to practice. Lauren graduating valedictorian, the year I was sent to Wisconsin. Lauren cutting the ribbon at her boutique. The narrator's voice was deep and inspiring. In a world of distractions, Lauren Bailey has always known her path. Unwavering, uncompromised, a leader who stands alone. The irony was so thick it tasted like metal. As the video played, I saw Simon Wright stand up. He adjusted his jacket and walked toward the VIP table where my family sat. He didn't make a scene. He leaned down and whispered something into my father's ear. My father went pale in the strobe light of the video screen. He shook his head violently. Wright didn't back down. He gestured toward the backstage area. It wasn't a request. My father grabbed my mother's hand. My mother grabbed Lauren's. The three of them stood up, hunched over, and scurried toward the side curtain, trying to make it look like a bathroom break. Wright looked back at me and signaled with a small tilt of his head. "Come." I stood up and followed them. The backstage area was a chaotic warren of cables, sound equipment, and nervous stagehands wearing headsets. Wright led them into a small holding room draped in black pipe and drape. I stood just outside the opening, in the shadows of a lighting rig. "This is outrageous," my father was hissing, his voice low and trembling with rage. "You pull us away in the middle of the tribute video? Do you know who is out there?" "I know exactly who is out there. Mr. Bailey." Wright's voice was calm, icy. "That is the problem. We have a contract," my mother snapped. "We have a donation schedule. If you are trying to renegotiate—" "I am not negotiating," Wright said. "I am informing. We have completed the preliminary review of the documents submitted by Allison Bailey." "She is a liar!" Lauren cried out. Her voice was shrill, breaking the polished veneer. "She is just jealous. You can't listen to her." "We verified the notary stamp, Lauren," Wright said. "And we verified the police report from 2014, the sealed one. Our legal team spoke to the county clerk an hour ago. The fingerprints on the booking sheet for the juvenile diversion program do not match yours. They match your sister's." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. "You committed fraud," Wright said. "You signed a grant agreement stating you had no criminal history and no undisclosed liabilities. You lied, and you used this foundation's money to build a career on that lie." "We can pay it back," my father said. He sounded desperate now. "We will write a check. Tomorrow. Just let her do the speech. Let us finish the night. We will withdraw quietly next week. Please. Don't humiliate us." "It is not about the money anymore," Wright said. "It is about the liability. We cannot put a fraud on stage as the face of our values. The board has voted. The partnership is paused, effective immediately. You can't do this," my mother said. Her voice wasn't pleading. It was threatening. "We will sue you. We will tell everyone you are discriminating against a young woman because of a family dispute." "Go ahead," Wright said. But right now, you are not going on stage. I have to, Lauren said. They are announcing me. Listen. Out in the ballroom, the video was ending. The applause was swelling. The MC's voice boomed over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our sterling ambassador of the year, Lauren Bailey. My father looked at Wright. Then he looked at the stage entrance. Go, my father hissed to Lauren. Just go. He won't stop you in front of the cameras. Mr. Bailey, I am warning you, Wright said, stepping forward. Run! Lauren! My mother screamed. It was madness, a desperate, delusional Hail Mary. Lauren looked at them, terrified, and then the applause acted like a magnet. She pulled away from Wright's reaching hand and sprinted toward the light. She burst onto the stage. The applause hit her like a physical wave. She stumbled slightly in her heels, then caught herself. She walked to the podium, breathless, her chest heaving. I stepped out from the curtains. I stood in the wings, visible only to her and the people in the front row. Wright stood beside me. He didn't chase her. He didn't tackle her. He just reached for his radio. Cut the feed, he said quietly, and tell the coordinator to prep the statement. On stage, Lauren gripped the podium. She looked out at the sea of faces. She smiled, but it was a grimace. Thank you, she said. Her voice echoed in the massive room. Thank you so much. She looked down at her prepared speech. The teleprompter was scrolling. When I was a child, I learned that independence was the only virtue. She read the first line. When I was a child. Her voice cracked. She looked up. She looked for her parents in the VIP section, but they weren't there. They were still backstage, arguing with security. Then she looked to the side. She saw me. I was standing 10 feet away, in the shadows of the wing. I wasn't glaring. I wasn't holding up evidence. I was just standing there, wearing the face she had been born with. The silence in the room began to stretch. It went from respectful to awkward. People started to shift in their chairs. The silence of a performance failing is a heavy thing. It sucks the air out of the room. Lauren said. My mother burst out of the holding room. She pushed past a security guard and ran toward the stage steps. She was smiling, a wide, terrifying, pageant mom smile. She was coming to save the scene. She was going to grab the mic, make a joke about nerves, and spin the narrative, but Simon Wright moved. He stepped into her path at the bottom of the stairs. He didn't touch her. He just stood there, a solid wall of corporate compliance. He crossed his arms. My mother stopped. She tried to step around him. He mirrored her movement. Let me pass, she hissed, her smile still plastered on for the audience. No, Wright said. The audience saw it. They saw the elegant woman in gold being blocked by the man in the suit. The murmur began, a low ripple of confusion that spread from the front tables to the back. Then, the teleprompter went black. A chime sounded over the PA system. Ladies and gentlemen, a disembodied voice announced, we apologize for the interruption. Due to a pending verification review regarding the grant eligibility, the Foundation is pausing the ambassador presentation at this time. Please enjoy your dessert. It was the most polite, brutal assassination I had ever witnessed. Pending verification review. In that room, among those people. That phrase was a death sentence. It meant fraud. It meant scandal. It meant, don't write the check. The room shifted instantly. The celebration evaporated, replaced by the sharp, hungry energy of suspicion. Phones came out. I saw the flashes of cameras turning from the stage to the stage wings. Lauren was left alone at the podium. The music had stopped. The prompter was dead. The Foundation had just disavowed her in front of 500 of the most powerful people in Chicago. She looked small. She looked like a paper doll that had been left out in the rain. She looked at our parents, who were now being corralled by security at the bottom of the stairs. My father was red-faced, shouting. My mother was weeping. But it looked angry, not sad. Then Lauren looked at me. She had a choice. She could run. She could faint. She could stick to the script and claim it was a mistake, but the script was gone. She leaned into the microphone. It was still live. "I am not who you think I am," she said. Her voice was shaky, wet with tears, but it carried. The room went dead silent again. Even the waiters stopped moving. "My name is Lauren," she said. "But I am not the only one. I have a sister." She took a breath, a shuddering gasp that echoed through the speakers. "My whole life, this whole story," she gestured to the blank screen behind her. "It is curated, it is managed. I don't even know what is real anymore. I don't remember my own life because my parents edited it to make me sellable." She looked at me in the wings. Tears were streaming down her face now, ruining the perfect makeup. "I am sorry," she whispered into the mic. "Allison, I am so sorry. You were erased so I could shine, and I let it happen because I was scared of the dark." It wasn't a perfect speech. It was messy. It was uncomfortable. It was the truth. My father broke free from the security guard. He lunged up the stairs, his face twisted in a panic that looked like madness. "Lauren, stop!" he screamed. "She is having an episode! Cut the mic!" He grabbed Lauren's arm, his fingers digging into the white silk. He tried to pull her away from the podium, physically dragging her back into the lie. "Let go of me!" Lauren cried, pulling back. My instinct fired. It was a physical jolt. Save her. Fix it. Be the buffer. I took a step forward. I wanted to run out there, push him off, and stand between them. That was my role. That was the architecture of our family. I was the wall that took the beating. But I stopped. I froze my foot mid-step. If I went out there, I became part of the drama. I became the crazy sister's spectacle. If I went out there, I was saving her from the consequences of the bargain she had made. Lauren had signed the papers. Lauren had taken the money. Lauren had chosen the spotlight. She had to stand in it alone. I pulled my foot back. I crossed my arms and watched. Security swarmed the stage. 3 men in black suits pulled my father off of Lauren. He was shouting about lawsuits, about ungrateful children, his dignity shredding with every word. My mother stood at the bottom of the stairs, watching her husband be restrained. She didn't move to help him. She realized the ship was sinking, and she was already looking for a lifeboat. She looked up at the wing. She looked at me. We locked eyes across the 10 feet of space that felt like a canyon. I expected her to beg. I expected her to mouth, "Help us," but she didn't. Her face hardened. Her eyes narrowed into slits of pure, cold calculation. She straightened her spine. She looked at me with a hatred so pure it felt like a physical blow. She mouthed words I could read perfectly. "You will pay for this." It wasn't a surrender. It was a promise. The family brand was destroyed. The money was gone, and the reputation was in ashes. But the malice remained. I didn't flinch. I nodded. Just once. Acknowledging the receipt of the threat, I turned my back on her. I turned my back on the stage, where Lauren was sobbing into her hands while security escorted her off. I turned my back on the donors whispering behind their hands. I walked out of the backstage door, into the cool, quiet alley behind the hotel. The air smelled of rain and exhaust. It was the sweetest thing I had ever smelled. My phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a text from Sarah. "Are you okay?" I heard something happened. I looked up at the night sky, where the city lights washed out the stars. I wasn't safe. I wasn't rich. I had a legal battle ahead of me, a sister in ruins, and parents who would spend the rest of their lives trying to punish me. But for the first time in 32 years, I existed. I was real. I typed back, "I am not just okay. I am finally here." I put the phone away and began the long walk home. Thank you for listening to Allison's story. It is a heavy tale, but one that speaks to the resilience of those who have been made to feel invisible. I would love to know where you are listening from. Please drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark dynamics of the Bailey family, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. There are many more secrets to uncover, and I would love to hear your thoughts on Allison's choice in the finale. Did she do the right thing by not stepping in? Let me know in English in the comments. Until next time.